Streets and Scholars, Alex Alonso and FG here to bring you guys another banger. I got the general in the house. What it do? I hear a little bit of noise in the background now.
Yeah, I'm over here ruffling some feathers, man. What's going on with it, Alex?
Oh man, I'm just trying to get in another episode, man.
No doubt. You can hear me pretty good on your end?
Oh yeah, everything sounds good, man. So
That's what's up.
How's the family treating you over there?
Oh man, everything good on this end, man. I can't complain at all. You know what I mean?
No doubt. So yeah, man, I wanted to get in another episode of Streets and Scholars because the people have been asking for it, and let's get right into it, man. Hey, as of February, I was going to bring this up on a previous episode. As of February, 1,003 people have been arrested for the January 6th. I guess what we calling that? The January 6th.
Talking about the riots, the Capital Riots?
The Capital Riots. 1,003. This is as of February. That number is probably a little higher now. I haven't got the latest number, but hey, the number went over 1,000 folks, man. And people said in the beginning, oh, they're not going to do nothing. The government ain't going to do nothing. They're just going to let all those white people act crazy because they're part of the plan. They're part of the team. But nah, 1,003 people have been indicted.
Well, I didn't think they was going to do shit either, man. But I see they done stepped that thing up and went on and did it. You know what I mean? So, like you say, maybe they just feel like America was disrespected, man. So, they want to stand on something.
It also could be that because Biden is in office. If Trump was in office, we don't know if he would be as aggressive with sending all these people to the feds. But
man, they'd arrested 5 people, man, if Trump was in office, man. Just based on because they was his people. You know what I mean?
And how many of these 1,003 people you think are going to end up in Victorville?
Shit, you know what? Maybe just the top dogs could, maybe, but it's possible. It's definitely possible. Shit, I mean, a lot of people took low deals. You know what I mean? 2 and 3 years, go to a camp, go to a low. But some of them dudes up at the top, man, them dudes can definitely land over there. But you got so many federal prisons and shit in the United States, man. They drop anywhere, man.
I know it's crazy because you could be in Alaska doing fair time, you could be in Florida, and you could be right here in Los Angeles doing fair time. It's crazy how many federal institutions are around this country.
Hell yeah, you know what I mean? So, that's one thing America do. They'll lock a motherfucker up, Alex. You know what I mean? I believe we got over 2 million incarcerated in this country. And the shit is really ridiculous if you ask me for a country our size. When you talk about India got 1 billion, China got 1 billion, some of these places the population is a lot larger than ours. Yeah, we incarcerate more people probably than 2 or 3 of them I just named put together.
Yeah, have you ever heard of anyone doing fair time in Alaska? I'm certain there's a federal prison in Alaska.
You know what? I don't think it is because I ran into a lot of Alaska dudes. So I don't think it's one over. Well, I know the Hawaii don't. I know the Hawaii dudes is always on this end, but I don't think it's one in Alaska. And because I ran into them dudes too. You know what I mean?
You're absolutely right. I just looked it up. It says there are no federal prisons located in the state of Alaska. Federal prisoners awaiting trial or sentencing are typically held in state facilities. That's crazy.
Yeah. So, depending on what kind of time they got, they may, like you say, stay in some of the county jails if it's like a year or 2, but they got a long time. They'll ship them over here on this side.
It says here that the prisoners from Alaska that got to do serious time are sent to Sheridan, Oregon.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a couple homies up there. Donnie Rue was up there. The homie Wood from Hollywood was up there. So it's real pretty up there is what they say at that Sheridan spot, man. It's beautiful because it rains so much. So the grass is real green and you know what I mean? But yeah, Sheridan up there.
So I guess Alaska and Hawaii are probably 2 of the few states that don't have federal prisons.
Yeah, I would say that. But, I'm sure some more because I never heard of one in Montana. I never heard somebody say they did time but you would be surprised. You'd definitely be surprised.
But it'd be some weird states that got federal prisons, like West Virginia got one. West Virginia is a small state. Kansas has Leavenworth.
Yeah.
It's some weird states. But yeah, man, 103 people. Most of those 103 people are probably going to do probation, but some of them are getting sent to the penitentiary for sure. We talked about Guy Reffitt and a couple other dudes. They're going to be, some of the dudes are getting 4, 5, 6 years for that riot.
Yeah, no doubt, man. So, they serving it as we speak, a few of them. So, they around out there.
And we always say we don't wish no time on anybody, but I can tell you this: I wish as much time as possible for any of those fools that participated in that riot. Man, I have no mercy on those folks that thought they can get away with. I mean, that the arrogance of those people. Like, we're gonna be on TV, we're gonna document it, we're gonna go on live, we're gonna storm the Capitol, and nothing's gonna happen to us. So no, I wish time on all them folks.
Well, you know what? They definitely had the arrogance to think that was nothing gonna happen. You know what I mean? I didn't think they would arrest 1,003 people, to be honest with you. But like I say, when it come down to us and them folks got into them back rooms and shit, and they like, hold on, bro, you disrespecting white folks, man. They'll do something with your ass. They've been doing it to us forever. So you know what I mean? They own people just getting a taste of what we've been going through for years, 100 years,
Well, I predict that 500 more people will be arrested if let's see, when is the presidential election? Is that going to be this year or next year?
24
yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
Okay,
So they finna start campaigning again, at the end of this year. This November, they finna start campaigning for next year.
Okay, so Biden's got all of this year and he's got next year to be
right,
president.
Right.
Okay, yeah, they're definitely gonna go up. As long as Biden's in office, I don't see nothing changing. So I'm gonna predict that this number is gonna be 1,500 before the end of the year. Because when you look at that footage, there's got to be at least 2,000 people that's participated in that. Whether they went in the building or out the building, I heard it doesn't matter. If you were part of it, you can get charged for some sort of crime. So I feel 1,500 is coming soon.
But shit, we definitely gonna see shit.
All right. We didn't get to talk about this before, but Tory Lanez's sentencing got postponed to April 10th.
Any particular reason?
Well, he hired some new lawyers. He's got David Kenner, and he's got a couple of assistant attorneys that working with David Kenner, and they're going to file some
kind of motion, maybe.
Yeah, we're gonna hear the motions on April 10th. So it might not even be sentenced. He might not even get sentenced on April 10th. They're gonna file some motions. They're gonna argue some points, and whether or not the judge accepts them or not, then he'll determine whether or not he's gonna sentence Tory Lanez on April 10th. So that's the sentencing date, but there's a chance that date gets postponed again because of all the legal maneuvering that his new legal team is doing. I think he's just trying to take advantage of an appeal and a bail. That's my guess. He wants to get that a bail while he's appealing this case, which is really hard to get, but it's possible.
No, it's possible. It's been done, so it's highly possible. But it all depends on how the judge take it, and so we're gonna definitely keep an eye on that.
It's the same thing that Tupac got back in 90. Let me think, what year is that? 95.
Yeah, but at the same time, Pac was in prison doing some time before he got bailed out, though, too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he just barely started doing his time. Let me see, how much time did he? Well, I think he was in jail just for a few months. He was.
You think so?
Yeah, because
I thought it was a little longer, but I definitely could be wrong because I definitely don't know for sure.
I'm thinking he got out in 95 around the September, October of 95. He was only out for 11 months before he got killed in 96.
That's all?
Yeah, it was like 1 year. He was with Death Row.
That shit seemed like it was a lot longer than that, man.
It seemed like Death Row was his death sentence, to keep it real. Signing to Death Row, he was murdered a year later.
Well, he was hanging with some killers and gorillas, man. And sometimes, that just how the funk pop off. I definitely wish it would have been avoided and, in some kind of way, but man, that's how the ball bounced sometime, Alex.
Isn't it true that some of those killers and gorillas, you grew up with some of them or most of them?
No, all of them. Yeah, exactly. You know what I mean? Everybody that was there that night, man, and don't forget, I was out there. I was at 662 that night. You know what I mean? So I was waiting for them to come to the club. You know what I mean? So they was on their way to the club, actually, and so yeah, and it was definitely the homies and shit. And but I hate that they let that happen. I ain't gonna say let that happen. I hate that happened, on the homies' watch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it seems as if he wasn't like protected or guarded the way your multi-million-dollar artist should have been protected and guarded. He was hanging out with all the, as you said, with all the killers and gorillas, like if he was one of them.
No doubt, him and Trey was super tight. You know what I mean? And you know, they were friends pretty much. You know, but at the same time, shit can happen regardless. I mean, no matter where you at, no matter who you are, you know, shit can pop off, especially when you out in the streets like Vegas and shit like that, because you run into so many celebrities moving around. It ain't impossible, just like we saw with the Pac situation.
So check this out. I just looked it up. He was sentenced to prison. I guess he was sentenced to 4 to 5 years on February of '95, and by October he was bailed out on a $1.4 million bail. So what's that? How many months?
Yeah,
is
that's
that?
like 8-9 months.
Yeah, so he was only a few months, 8-9 months into his sentence when he was able to get that $1.4 million bond. And that's exactly what Tory Lanez is trying to get. He would love to get a bond so that he can fight his appeal while free. But you know, here's the other side to that. If you lose your appeal, you lose all the credit of time served you would have had in the first place. You know, how would you deal with a situation like that? Let's say you sentenced to 5 years. Are you really going to rely on your appeal coming through? Let me bail out and fight this appeal. Or are you going to say, let me just sit down for 5 years and get this over with?
Hell no, I'm gonna do the same thing Tory Lanez doing, trying to, you know, get my appeal done while I'm on the street. Nobody want to go sit down in prison, Alex. You know what I mean? Now, the thing about it is he pushes his release date back further and further if he does lose his appeal. You're right about that. But at the same time, man, don't nobody want to go in there and sit down under no circumstances. So a dude to fight it and fight it and fight it. Had they gave me a bond, I would have tried to push my shit back as much as I can, you know, for as long as I can. And you know, so I understand what he's trying to do.
Okay, but then at the same time, the likelihood of winning the appeal is like slim to none. So now you bailed out, you fight it for about 2-3 years. You still got to go to prison, and those 2-3 years you could have already had that much time served, that time credit, and be coming home sooner than later, right?
No, you're 100% right, but at the same time, you know, that man, dude trying to stay on the street right now. You know what I mean? Nobody know what the future holds. Dude trying to hang out and swing right now. So I do understand what you saying, but I get what he trying to do. You know.
So you think most people feel like I'd rather go to prison later than now? Is that the mentality? I want to avoid getting sent to prison for as much time as possible, and not thinking like, hey, if I hurry up and do this prison time, I can be home sooner. Because I feel like as you get older, especially Tory Lanez, he's in his early 30s. He's got a rap career he's got to worry about.
Right.
Does he really want to get sent to prison when he's 34, 35, 36 and come home in his 40s? Or does he still want to come home if he goes now, he will be home in his 30s, maybe. Let's just say that, you know, he still has some career left.
It's hard to say because he don't know how much time he gonna get. You know what I mean? So, you know, you gonna fight and fight and fight, man. Because if they give him 10, you know what I mean? That's shit. You know, I mean, I understand what he trying to do. You know,
Yeah.
That's why the dudes who get locked up and they don't get a bail, they appreciate sometime like me. I'm glad they didn't give me one. I probably would have did some stupid shit on top of tried to push it back and push it back and push it back. But at the same time, like you say, man, that's just prolonging your come home, you know. So
prolonging your come home for sure.
Yeah.
So look, if Pac would have never bailed out, would have sat in there for his 4-year sentence, he would have never signed the death row.
Right.
And there's a chance he would have never got killed. You know what I'm saying? Because it's the LA politics that got him killed, you know, and I think LA politics is one. No, I don't want to say it's the most severe because you got politics in Chicago and in cities in Texas, but I think there's a good chance Pac would still be alive.
True that. But also, you know, you got to think from Pac's position and think of your position. You sitting in jail. Somebody want to come along and say, hey, Alex, I want you to do this podcast, man. We're going to bail you out. You come home, you know, we basically own you over this podcast, man, but you're going to make some money. We're going to take care of you, you know, and say if it was Berry Gordy or somebody, you know, back then, because all them record dudes be, you know, lightweight shiesty when it comes to the money part. You know what I mean? So you sitting in jail, they say, Alex, come home and do this podcast. We're going to bail you out. We're going to put this million up. You're not going to say, bro, I'm going to do my time you know, and sit here, you're gonna be like, shit, what's the topic? You know what I mean? And that's just the reality of it. If somebody else would have went and got Pac, whether it was you know, whether it was Jay-Z or whether it was, you know, another big, you know, at the time, No Limit or whoever was big back then, you know, Birdman and them, it just would have been a different dude that went and did it. Now, don't get me wrong. Yeah, that's what we go back to the LA politics. LA politics got him. I mean, I'm gonna tell you what I think got him. You know, you call it LA politics, but I'm gonna narrow it down, man. He fell in love with the power rules, man. You know, that love and camaraderie that he seen the homies you know, the love that, you know, I've had and understand the addiction to, you know, this P-Funk thing, you know, and that's what happened. You know what I mean? He fell in love. He really felt he was one of the boys, you know, one of the, you know, and everywhere we went back then, you know, man, it was just well respected, or we handled our business. So I get what he fell into, but at the same time, you're right, he would be probably still alive, but would he be the legend that he is now? Would we, you know, All Eyes on Me sold 10 million copies, if not 11 or 12? Had he did that, could have did that on without Dre or on another label? You know, could all the dynamics, Machiavelli, with all those things come into play that made him a legend? Because don't forget, before he left, he was just Pac. He was. I loved him then, but he wasn't a legend at that point. He had a few cool albums out, but he wasn't the dude he became to be when he came to the road. So all those factors line up when you get to talking about it.
Yeah, but he could have took all of those amazing songs, that double CD, to another label at another future time. You know, I think that the music was already there. It was just a matter of where he was going to do the music with. Now you say he linked up with Dre. I don't know how much credit do you give Dre for the success of Pac's albums while he was on death row? You know, that's a question that I think is debatable.
I mean, it's debatable, but Dre was one of the greatest at the time, bro. You know what I mean? Arguably, you know, across the nation, you got to think, you know, everybody from Mary J. Blige to Mac 10 to, you know, I mean, and 1,000 others was buying Dre beats. You know what I mean? And he definitely was the super producer of the moment. You had others, but who's to say, you know, Manny Fresh would have took him in that same direction? You know, don't forget, we was on some gangster rap shit, and we was running the West with gangster rap back then. You know, Manny Fresh and then was still down now. Manny Fresh is a hell of a producer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying he wouldn't have went in the gangster rap sound had he went to No Limit, or he might have went to other. The sound would have been different. And at that time, gangster rap was running the shit. You know, so I got to argue with you on that to say he would have, not that he wouldn't have put out platinum albums. Could he have did it the same? I can't say he could have.
Well, check this out. Snoop Dogg had more success, had more number one hits, or hits that charted higher, when he was produced by the Neptunes and Pharrell than he did when he was with Death Row. Even though he has hits with Death Row, but his songs were far more commercially successful when he was produced by Pharrell and Neptunes.
You're right, because Pharrell and the Neptunes were different kind of producers. They had different kind of sounds, different kind of backgrounds. You know, you got to think Death Row, homie, was limited to gangster shit. You know, they didn't let Snoop give his full potential over there at the road because of all of the politics. You know what I mean? But even when Snoop went to No Limit, even when Snoop did with other producers, Snoop shit was still gangster. It still had that West Coast sound, because that was Snoop, regardless who the beats he had. You know, so and let me back up. Snoop was from Long Beach as well. You know what I mean? So Snoop was from the turf, you know, and you know, come up out the set. Pac wasn't. You know what I mean? Because don't forget, Pac could have flipped it and did all kind of different styles because he was versatile. You know what I mean? So I don't know if, like I'm saying, my thing is Snoop was gonna keep it gangster because that was what he was. You know, Pac could have went all kind of different ways and shit with his shit because he had that ability to do so.
Well, I just think that Pac probably could have been successful wherever he went. Imagine Pac being produced by Pharrell. You know, I mean, look at how successful Snoop was. So I wish that I really wish he would have just sat his ass down in that New York State prison, told David Kenner, I would love to bail out, but I don't know if my life is going to be in the good hands if I'm over there at death row. I might not even live another year if I sign with y'all. I'm going to do my time, get out in 3 or 4 years, and then continue my career. And I think he would even be more legendary because he would have put out, how many albums would have Pac put out if he didn't get murdered?
I don't know, man. Some of that made him legendary. You know what I mean? And because you got to think of it, just like the rest of the dudes, just like the Jay-Z's, just like the dudes who are still around today. How many fucking albums can you put out until the new sound come, or you burn out, or you go into a businessman mode and go behind the scenes? You know what I mean? And I looked at him like he could have owned his own label and had artists to come up under him, made hundreds of millions of dollars. But at the same time, you still can only say so much. And as an artist, as you get older, you got to think Pac was 25 back then, young hog. At 50, he not finna still probably be selling millions of records at 50. You know what I mean? So I ain't saying I definitely think he would have still been platinum plus artist, but at the same time, I don't know, man. That Death Row whole era, aura, and everything about it, I think, man, solidified his legendary status.
Okay, so I got the exact dates. He was sentenced to prison on February 7th. He was bailed out on October 14th of 1995. If I'm doing my math right, that's about 8 months. 8 months. So I guess if David Kenner can pull off the same magic, and I don't really know how David Kenner was able to do that.
I don't either. I always wondered about that.
Yeah, he's a hell of a negotiator, and that's why the Tory Lanez legal team brought him on, just to see if they can get him a bond. I think it's going to be more difficult for Tory Lanez to get a bond because he's a Canadian citizen. And usually citizens from other countries are treated differently because of the idea of you pose a flight risk.
No doubt.
But I mean, if you go to Canada, Canada's just going to send you back. It's not like you're going to a country that doesn't have a relationship with the United States. So, but I don't think that matters. I think the courts look at it as, okay, this guy's a Canadian citizen. We're going to put you on a different, there's different rules when you're not a U.S. citizen. So I don't know if this guy gonna bail out. I don't even know if it's gonna work. I mean, what David Kenner did was what? How many years ago was that? 1995.
30 years ago. Yeah.
damn near 30 years ago. And I'm telling you, man, when I see David Kenner in court, I just don't feel like he's got enough energy, to do all the stuff that it takes to handle an appeal. And the dude is like 80 years old now, but he does have a couple of young lawyers that are gunning for Tory Lanez.
I mean, he had enough energy to, to pull up on you at court and shit and ask for that fade and shit. But
yeah.
But no, times have changed. Court shit has changed. I don't think he's a flight risk at all, to be honest with you. Talking about Tory Lanez, I believe that he honor what's going on, because he know if he ever wanted to work again or bring his ass back to the U.S. where his bread and butter is, he would be a fool to mess that up. So I don't got him being a flight risk. It's just all I believe is going to be on the judge, on what the circumstances of the case, how guilty they actually feel he is, and just how the judge feel about letting him out. Because they already know it's just basically we letting you out for to do the due diligence, and you're gonna bring your ass back, and you're gonna go start serving this time.
Yeah. Well, we'll see on April 10th what happens in court. And we'll see what kind of magic that David Kenner and his younger legal team are able to do regarding Tory Lanez getting bail and perhaps getting another trial. That's going to be another thing. All right, man, I wanted to tap in with the story here that's from LA, man. 18 people were arrested and got caught with more than 80 straps, several pounds of dope, in an investigation down in the harbor area of Los Angeles. Let me see if I have a clip here. Let me play this clip real quickly. Let me play this clip. But this was a huge bust here in the Los Angeles area, and I wanted to talk about it real quick. Let's see.
Okay.
Here we go. Now, this is the first time we're doing this remotely, so bear with me for a second, folks. I'm trying to share my screen here, and here it is. Boom. And this is the story coming out of this is Fox 11 News, local here in LA. And the anchor woman used to be one of my favorites back in the day.
Christine Devine.
You already know Christine
Man.
Devine. And man, Christine Devine has been doing the news, man, I think for like 20 something years.
Yeah.
You know, I hate to say that she's getting older. People say that's ageism. But yeah, when Christine Devine first hit the scene, she had to be the finest lady in news. She's still looking good, even though she's older. But here's a story out of the harbor area of LA.
Okay. Meth, fentanyl, pounds of cocaine, and ghost guns. A multi-agency task force arrests 18 people in an anti-gang investigation.
We know that being able to derive this level of cooperative support to ensure that we are getting this type of weaponry and drugs off of our street is not just making the harbor community safer, it's making all of Los Angeles safer.
Work on the investigation was done by the ATF, LAPD, and LA County District Attorney's Office. Authorities seized 19 pounds of methamphetamine, 3 kilos of fentanyl, 5,000 fentanyl pills, more than 5 pounds of cocaine, and 82 guns, including ghost guns and assault weapons.
This investigation has been ongoing and filled with arrests since January 2020, when we partnered to target the violence created by the shot callers of East Wilmas. Multiple surveillance operations, search warrants, firearms and narcotics buys were conducted in Wilmington, San Pedro, Long Beach, and Arizona.
The suspects face conspiracy allegations, including weapons and narcotics, possession, sales, trafficking, and gang-related assaults.
All right, there you go. East Side Wilmas is a barrio down here in the harbor area of Los Angeles, and the HA, the harbor area, that is a car for the Southsiders in prison. I don't believe the brothers. I don't know what the brothers' car is for the hoods down there when they go to prison. Who do they ride with? Because they do have the Harbor City Crips, and they have a couple. They actually have a blood set down there called Pain.
Yeah, Eastside Pain. No, they got Eastside Pain. They got Ghost Town out in Wilmington. They Bloods. You know what I mean? Yeah. They got some homies down there and some Crips. But the thing about it, they ride with the homies and they ride with the Crips. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but they don't. I wonder what car they ride with when they go to the penitentiary. They're not that deep. They're not that deep down there.
No doubt, but they might ride with the LBC. You never know. You know what I mean? I'm not even sure about that. I'm not even sure about that. But I know when I run into the homies, like I say from Ghost Town, they just ride with the homies. You know?
Yeah.
So.
Did you see all those straps?
Man, I'm glad we didn't get into it with the Wilmas, man. They was ready. They was ready, homie. They wasn't bullshitting down there.
I gotta admit that I'm impressed with their arsenal. I mean, I'm a gun fan. So it was an impressive arsenal if it's really true that they had all of those.
Right, man. It was hard for me to believe that they really found those guns at these people's spots and shit, you know. And to be honest with you, that's the first thing I said, man. That's a lot of artillery. I ain't saying it's not possible. But for people who are looking, you know, before you get to fucking with gangs and talking shit to motherfuckers, just think of a hood got that kind of weaponry, that kind of drugs to fuel a war. You know, that's how you gonna lose. You know what I mean? Because they already ready. You know, and they definitely was ready, Alex. You know, if in true they had all that shit.
Now you just made me think that now everybody who's a rival to Eastside Wilmas, now they're saying let's get them. Because they're weaker, right? They got all their weapons taken off the streets, and now they're vulnerable to all the enemies thanks to the government, the federal government, and the local LAPD.
No doubt, but they probably, you know, scattered out around because after they hit their hood, you know what I mean? They probably actually looking for some more of them that they didn't find, you know, but at the end of the day, you know, all them guns they had, they probably have damn near more guns than they got members from their gangs if that was all their guns. You know what I mean? You know, so, you know, and at any given time, you know, just because you got them, you know, that don't mean a few shooters don't got a couple of their own that they didn't get. So, you know, I wouldn't take them light still, but I mean, that just was a hell of an arsenal, bro. I ain't gonna lie. I haven't seen a gang outside of a cartel type shit with that kind of firepower, you know, in the set.
Yeah, man. I was thinking that they probably slang their straps to their allies, to their homies. because that's too many. That's even too many gangs, too many guns for one gang. And I don't see the East Side Wilmas. They're average size. So yeah, I'm sure they were slanging, because everything they were doing here, they had fentanyl, they had cocaine, they had a whole bunch of fentanyl pills as well.
Right.
It's crazy that that people is actually selling this fentanyl.
Oh, no doubt, man. You know, and it's killing people too, man. It's killing people by the boatloads, and that's another crisis that they having in America. You know, and it's detrimental to motherfuckers out here in the U.S., bro. That fentanyl is something major.
Do you know that some drug users are aware of the fentanyl and they will still do it because they know that the high is a special kind of high. It's a different kind of high. So it's not like people are taking fentanyl unknowingly. I'm sure there's some that do it. They don't know that there's fentanyl, but there's some people that are like, I'm cool with it.
Well, the thing about it, what I do know is that a lot of people who, got that fuck with the fake fentanyl pills and shit, the fake oxycodone and all that laced with fentanyl, they not popping them. Or the fake Percocets, that got fentanyl in them, they not popping them. They breaking them down, grinding them up, and they intravenously shooting them. You know what I mean? And when you intravenously shoot fentanyl, it's a lot more, it's more likely you will survive than it was if you just pop that pill. You know what I mean? Because I from what I'm hearing, that when you shooting, you can actually feel to a degree, okay, stop now, because I feel a certain, you know what I mean? Opposed to just popping that pill, man, and you just out of there. Or, the homie just died a couple years ago, man. He thought he was snorting some lines of cocaine, and it was fentanyl, man. I'm talking about 20 seconds. He passed out, died right there on the spot. One of the homies lived, so he was able to tell us exactly what happened. But man, that shit is a monster, man. I'll be scared to take a Tylenol with all these goddamn pills going around with this fake shit in it,
Okay, check out all the dope they had. 19 pounds of methamphetamine, 3 kilos of just fentanyl, 5,000 fentanyl pills, and 5.5 pounds of cocaine. Now, I don't know how they charge 18 people with that. Because you can't, not everybody's going to get, not everyone's going to get charged for that, all of that dope, but that's enough dope to send you to the feds for what? For life, right?
A lifetime. Yeah, lifetime,
that's a life sentence in the feds.
Yeah.
So I don't know how what's crazy? Sometimes in these cases, they divide, let's say they got 18 defendants in this case. I'm not sure if the FBI was part of this, but sometimes they split the defendants. Yeah, it says here, during the investigation with the support of the ATF, the LAPD, they use several wiretaps. So that means some of these people are going to the feds. But I don't know if you ever look at the specifics of one of these indictments. Let's say it's 50 dudes.
Mm-hmm.
25 might go to the state, 25 might go to the feds out of the same case.
I ain't familiar with that. Is that right?
Yeah, they did that, and they did that with the indictments in the jungles. They did Operation Cold Stone, and they did Operation Red Rain. And someone was telling me it's just because all of the agencies that were involved, it's never one agency. You got the LAPD, you got the sheriff, you got the FBI. So they want some of the defendants to serve time under their credit. So everybody wants to take a little bit of the credit. It's
take a little bit of the credit. Yeah.
It's like slavery. I look at it as chattel slavery. It's like, all right, we're gonna give you these black folks, and then we're gonna give the FBI these black folks. We're gonna give the state these, and then everybody will be happy because everyone can send people to prison.
Everybody can. Yeah.
So this is similar in this case with Wilmas, because the feds and the local law enforcement were involved in this investigation, but I don't know how do you get less time for getting caught with 19 pounds of meth, 5 pounds of cocaine, 3 kilos of fentanyl. It just seems like everyone's going to prison for life.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them dudes gonna get conspiracy to distribute. You know what I mean? Everybody not gonna get a possession. Somebody gonna get a possession, but at the same time, man, it's a lot of time that's gonna be distributed through that crew, through that 18. But man, I done seen cases like this where they find all this shit, and because the way they found it, they can't even pin it on, like, say, one person or one group, but they found it at a spot where somebody told that was a stash house. Nobody can be accountable for that stash house. I've seen cases like this where they find all this shit, man, and dudes get 10 years and shit just based on because they don't have enough evidence to convict them and say it was actually theirs. So, you know, one thing about the feds and one thing we see about these, you know, these joint task force investigations is they find a lot of shit, but everybody don't get pinned down for all that shit, you know, a lot of times, you know what I mean? So I want to see how this one pan out.
Yeah, and that doesn't even include the 80 firearms. So you could add the 80 guns to all of that dope, and this is a serious case. Now, they mentioned ghost guns. They said some of these 80 firearms are ghost guns. What the hell is a ghost gun?
Well, that's the new thing going around on the street. Ghost guns are, you know, gun kits that you can buy on your own, say from Arizona, or you get them shipped in from somewhere and you buy the pieces and you put them together. Basically, they don't have no serial numbers or no identification marks, you know, so you can't trace it. So that's basically what a ghost gun is. They manufacture with no serial numbers, you know, or identifying ID numbers, you know, to trace the gun. So that's what they call a ghost gun. Just guns with no numbers, no prints, no marks, you know. And you can order the shit over the internet now, bro.
Damn.
Yeah, because what dudes is doing, they buy this piece from China, buy this piece from Mexico, buy this piece, put that shit together, you know, man, and they out there smacking shit.
Oh, okay. So I remember my pops was telling me when he was in the military, they used to steal guns from the Marine Corps. And I'm like, how do you steal guns? He said, well, we would take the guns apart in the machine room and we would mail the guns home part by part.
Damn.
So you could break a gun down into multiple parts.
Yeah.
So they will just send like the barrel, they'll send like the shaft, they'll break down the grip. And, you know, over the course of several months, you go home, you got a few guns there that you could assemble. And I guess technically, my pops had ghost guns back in the 1950s and 60s.
Yeah, no doubt. You know, so this ain't nothing new, probably. You know what I mean? Something probably been going on for forever. That, you know, you always, man. Let me tell you something, man. You know, until, you know, like I said, they finding more and more of them on the streets. But for what I'm hearing now, is they done put a couple laws into place, man. And when they catch you with these ghost guns, they giving you an extra a substantial amount of time for having them. You know, these FNEs they got out there, you know, these guns with switches on them. You know, I think they'd already changed the laws for the guns with switches on them. When I say switch, you just got a switch on a gun that can change from automatic to semi-automatic just with a switch, and it's a handgun, you know. So they definitely not shooting with the 38s that we were shooting with in the 80s. You know, it's definitely a different ball game. And so they changing the laws to fit this new ball game.
Yeah. I've been hearing this term ghost guns come up in so many cases, and I don't really think anyone's really broke it down or how many ghost guns are really out there on the streets. It seems like ghost guns are rare, but the more and more these cases are popping up, maybe I don't know, half the guns on the streets is half, maybe too much to say half of them are ghost guns, or
no, it could be definitely possible because that's what they going to, and that they's so easier to get, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, let me be honest with you, you know, I try to school the little homie sometime and say, listen, bro, if you run around carrying a gun, you know, because they gonna do it if they want to or not. You know, you can't stop grown ass man from doing what they doing. But listen, homie, if you don't have a record, don't keep a bullet in the chamber. That bullet, if you get caught with a gun and you don't have a felony on your record, you know, and the bullet is not in the chamber, it's a misdemeanor. You know what I mean? You running around with the bullet in the chambers makes it a felony. You know, now, if you ever been to jail or you ever already have a felony, it don't matter if you got a ghost gun or not. You in possession of any gun, that a ghost gun gonna get you more time than a regular gun. You know, so you might as well have a regular one. You know what I mean? You know, you go, you know. So that's my whole thing. But I think the ghost guns are more available, you know, and you could just throw them away. And when they find them, they can't trace them back to, you know, somebody auntie in Texas. You know what I mean? So I believe that's why they, you know, running with the ghost guns nowadays. Untraceable.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you get caught with a ghost gun, that's probably an additional crime, an additional offense. You know, so just get you a regular gun and shoot. I like to keep a strap loaded, but I know that when it's loaded, that's another offense as well. But that's only if you're a felon, or does that matter?
No, it's if you're a non-felon, you know, you don't want to get caught with the one in the chamber. But the thing about it is, if you run around Compton, LA, Watts, Philadelphia, Chicago, you better have one in the chamber if you running around in that capacity. You know, if you run around looking for a gunfight or prone to being some shit right now, man, you ain't got time to put one in there. You got to be ready. You know, my thing all in all is you know, put them guns down, man, and you know, squab it out like how we did back in the day, you know. But I guess those times is damn near over, because these dudes, you know, they'll shoot you over anything nowadays.
Yeah, them days is over. Well, yeah, when I have my gun in the car, I keep the magazine separate from the gun, because I'm technically not supposed to have it loaded. But I'm like, that defeats the whole purpose. But that's California law, y'all. I'm not talking for the whole United States. The state of California says I cannot have the magazine in the gun when I'm driving around. So it is what it is. If I really needed it, I probably get killed by the time I put the magazine in the gun, right?
No, not necessarily though, Alex, because you got to really understand that a dispute that you get in is going to be a dispute that escalated. Unless a dude pulling up on the side of you and just gunning you down because you Alex Alonso, then yeah, that's a different topic. But most of the times, you know, you'll see a dude point, you'll see him look, you'll see him pull over, you'll see him enough time where I can grab that thing, pop one in there and get ready, you know, on most occasions, unless, you know, like I say, you in a damn near war. People ain't just running up on car. Look, we've been out here forever, you know, 50 plus years. People ain't just running up on everybody in every car they see and just shooting into the car just because, you know what I mean? A lot of these situations is you got an enemy, you know, you got a certain situation, which means, like for me, when I carry the gun on the daily, shit, when I'm not in Compton in LA, I don't have my gun like ready. You know what I mean? It's put up and tucked away and all that. You know, when I get off on Rosecrans off the 710, when I get off on, you know, Rosecrans off the 110, when I jump off to go to my grandmother's house, you know, get off on Slauson, it's in my lap. Because at this point, you know, you got to either be ready or you're not. You feel me? So those are the dynamics. But for the way we live today, you know, I don't carry a gun to work, at work, or when I'm working, or, you know, just a different time for us. You know what I mean? So sometimes you can get that thing ready before some shit kick off. Don't get it wrong.
But I also got to keep it. Not only do I got to keep the magazine out the gun, I got to keep it in a case, and the case has to be locked. So now I got to unlock the case, and then I got to load the gun. You know, how long is that going to take?
But to be honest with you, Alex, I believe a guy that's a regular citizen got a gun in a car, in the center console, the clip is in the glove compartment, and I believe they'll run it, see that everything is legit. I don't think they taking nobody down for that in that capacity. Run your record, say if a person's record is clean. I don't believe they just doing it like that. You know what I mean? You know, now Tennessee, I mean, and Tennessee is different. Because I was in Memphis one time, man, and I'm at my people's house, and my cousin pull up, the police pull him over right in the driveway, right when he pull in the driveway. He got an AR in the car, he got a 9mm in the car, and he got a open bottle of Hennessy in the car. You know what I mean? I bullshit you not. So I'm ready to get up out the back door and shit, because I'm already knowing, you know what I mean? We got some weed in this motherfucking shit like that. So I'm peeping game. Man, they told dude, listen, man, you know, you shouldn't have this open container. You know what I mean? I could take you to jail for open container with a firearm, but I'm going to run your firearms. And if they legit, I'm going to let you go. Man, we watched right out the window. They ran and shit. And he got a whole AR in the car. You know what I mean? Clipped up. You know what I mean? I ain't saying he had one in the chamber, but the clip was in it. And man, I seen when the police put the bottle of Hennessy, half bottle of Hennessy on the top of the car. When he let him go, man, hey man, go and do your business. The guns was legit. It's different in some states, you know. California though, shit, they would have had his ass, you know, in California, you know.
And California law enforcement officers get so paranoid, even when a law-abiding citizen such as myself has a gun in the car. I got pulled over in my truck, and I had the gun in the box, and the box was locked, and I had it in the back seat.
Mm-hmm.
I opened up the glove box to give him my registration, and he saw a box of bullets right there. You know, when I opened up the thing, a box of bullets basically spilled out, and he said, "You got a gun in the car?" I said, "I actually do. It's in the back seat." And he got all crazy. "All right, get out the car." He pulled the strap out, and I'm like, "Hey, it's legit. It's legit." And then I gave him all my paperwork, and they cuffed me. They handcuffed me, like literally handcuffed me, and I got a legal gun in the car. And then the dude, this is where it went left. He said, I'm gonna have to open up your gun box. And I said, well, I don't give no permission to open up the gun box. I had to sit there. I had to sit there for an hour. So and everything I did was legal, and they still had me up for like an hour, maybe even more than an hour. They had me on the sidewalk. They brought in reinforcements. One cop came over to me and said, if you don't give us the key to your gun box, we're gonna bolt cutter it. We're gonna use bolt cutters and open it up. I said, go get your bolt cutters.
Right, you definitely would have beat that, just hands down. I beat them. Yes, ex-con, so it's doable. You have rights, bro.
Yeah, they ended up not doing it. It was just a bunch of tough talk.
Yeah.
But one of the sergeants came up to me and said, we just want to make sure that your gun is not loaded and that you have your magazines, not in the gun. And I said, it's not loaded. So they eventually let me go. But, California is a little too strict with their guns, with their gun laws for law-abiding citizens, believe it or not.
No doubt. That's what it is here, man. They so stringent, and it's not just guns, it's just everything, man. They driving people out the state left and right, so I don't know how long we're gonna be able to put up with the bullshit ourselves, you know what I mean? As we get older and older, man, it seems like they just trying to push us out on every level, taxes upon taxes upon taxes, so shit getting just getting wild out here on the West, man.
Yeah, and I guess that's why there's all these investigations to various neighborhoods throughout Los Angeles. On this other story I wanted to tap in with, not too far from Eastside Wilmas, just maybe a few miles away, it looked like the Los Angeles Police Department and the FBI was investigating 18 people from the Nickerson Gardens, going back to, let's say, 2020. Well, no. This investigation goes all the way back to August of 2019, where a couple of guys from over there from the Nickersons just pled guilty to let's see, this federal press release says South Los Angeles-based gang member pleads guilty to leading crack cocaine manufacturing and distribution ring in Watts, where a brother named Damian Fats Baker, 45 years old, was hit with 9 counts, including delivering crack cocaine to customers, conspiracy, and he eventually pled guilty. He just pled guilty to 2 counts, which I kind of feel is a deal. What do you think about that? He was facing 9 counts. He pled guilty to 2 counts, and his co-conspirator, a brother named Carr, he pled guilty also to 2 counts while facing 7, and he just took 188 months. I don't know if 188 months is a deal. FG, you tell me, based on the charges that he was facing, was that a decent deal?
On the 188 months of 16 years and shit, it could have been priors involved, so his background could have got him to 188 years, not specifically the amount of drugs that they caught him with or the firearm. He could have got 10 for the drugs. He got an automatic 60 months for the gun, you know what I mean? But like I say, some of that could have been his background that got him that kind of time.
Yeah, but even though he was facing 7, I guess anytime where you're pleading guilty to lesser charges, I guess it's a deal, because 7 counts, who knows how many years, how many months they could have racked up. Carr was facing 7 counts. Baker was facing 9 counts. Baker hasn't been sentenced yet. That's Fats, and both these guys are from the Bounty Hunters, based on this federal FBI U.S. Attorney press release. I guess Baker is going to be facing the similar time that Carr already got, you think?
Well, I'm looking at it right here, man, and it say that for one, hell no, I don't think it's no deal, based on, because you had 7 charges that they didn't have. Listen, if they had 7 counts, they could have got you on, they would have. They always want to throw in some 5 extra charges, 6 extra charges to see what stick, man. They full of shit,
Yeah.
And so actually, you got all this, and then you talking about leaders and kingpins and doing, putting all this extras on it. A couple dudes in the hood had some work, you know what I mean? Was moving some work, and unfortunately, the Nickerson Gardens housing projects and Watts, which is home to the Bounty Hunters, is the largest housing project west of the Mississippi. So this ain't the first time that they've been targeted. They probably the largest gang in Los Angeles. No doubt. So this type of investigations has been going on in these projects for many years, going back to Renee and McGowan and them, you know what I mean? So I believe it's some bullshit, but they did get them. I'd suggest they take their deals, but to me, 188 months definitely wasn't a deal to me, but if he had to, based on he knows his background and what he was, actually caught with and all that, then sometimes you do want to get out their way. I don't know what Fat's gonna get. He could get something similar if he got I see he got the 5 to 40. I had the 10 to life, so he may have action at getting lesser time because they did change the crack laws to make the ratio, the disparity between crack and powder, more in tune with each other. So he could get 5 for the work, 5 for the guns, and come out with 10. So we'll see how that go.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of people in Los Angeles know who these guys are. Damian Baker is known as Fats. It says Fats from Compton, but he's from Bounty Hunter. They probably just he was using an address there. And then Carr is known as T-Bone, and they got all their names here. It's their names, their nicknames are in the indictment, just like your indictment. Your indictment was United States of America against Frank Thornton, aka FG, and they got their nicknames here too.
No doubt. That'd be the thing about it, is they'll be surprised. And I'm sure that these guys, like I say, T-Bone could have took the 16 based on, when you get that discovery and you realize how much they really know about you, that they not charging you with, sometimes it just gonna let you know that how much they really know about you, because everything they know about you, they don't have the proof to charge you or convict you with, but they know that you shot such and such. They know that you robbed such and such. They know that they know so much about you that when you get that discovery, you be like, damn. And you'd be like, man, I'm gonna take with the next deal. I'm taking it because I'm finna get out their way. And how old was T-Bone was 52 with a 16 piece. So what that put him out at that 16, that 15, 8 years, 8 months.
Man, he's gonna be like mid-60s, huh?
Yeah, he's gonna be like mid-60s. Yeah.
Damn, I'm surprised that brothers at this age is pushing this much weight, knowing what the consequences was. I noticed that a lot of people kind of fell back on some of these illegal hustles as they got older. People in their 50s is falling back for the most part, but I guess some people just can't. They're addicted to the game.
No doubt, but then at the same time, it's a hustle. Me personally, I didn't even think crack was still relevant in the streets, but that's just me, you know what I mean? And, I don't see as many, crackheads as opposed to they went to meth, they went to the oxycodone, they went to, different drugs. So I didn't even know that crack was still prevalent in the hood, to be honest with you.
I know. I don't even see too many people walking around the streets from where I used to live, where I grew up at, on crack. Man, the whole block. I used to drive down the street and see 10 crackheads just on the street. You don't really see that anymore.
No doubt. You definitely don't see that no more. And that was the point. That was my reason for even thinking that, it's not like it used to be, because don't get me wrong, I'm still in Compton, I'm still in Los Angeles, and I don't see crackheads roaming around like that, you know what I mean? And which is a good thing, but that don't mean they just didn't transition to other drugs. Or I just could not be in the area where it's going down at, you know what I mean? Because I'm not functioning in that world no more. But it seemed like that this is not like it used to be when I was coming up in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, man. This indictment also included, it wasn't just them two. What was it? 12 total, 12 or 13 total. And my question is, this investigation goes back to 2019. At some point, as a dude on the streets that's running around hustling, you have to know that they're watching, they're following you, they're tapping your phone lines, they're sending informants. Like, I think people just don't realize the level of investigative power that the federal government, along with the local government, has, because it says here they was on these people since 2019.
No doubt, but you do got to understand that, when I was selling drugs, crack, powder and, cocaine, that was my drug of choice to sell. We didn't have all that technology. We didn't have, we didn't have, like you say, shit before cell phones, that everybody had a cell phone before, you was able to be even investigated or thought of by the FBI, like I say, because of this same housing projects, the Nickerson Gardens housing projects and Watts, because they have been targeted so many times, because so many homies from the hunters have been indicted, on drug charges from this exact same projects. It seemed like, the intelligence would say, do something different. But at the same time, sometimes you believe your operation is so set up right that you're not gonna get took down like this. But in these day and ages, it's hard to get away with the things we got away with back in the day.
And when I was reading this indictment, it said here that Fats arranged to obtain powder cocaine from at least 2 drug suppliers, but whoever those suppliers are unnamed. And I'm looking at the language here. Arranged to obtain, meaning that it didn't actually have to happen, right? That's the conspiracy. Arranged to obtain doesn't say he actually obtained it.
Right,
he just planned to obtain them. And I'm wondering, were those 2 drug suppliers really drug suppliers or just people on the phone working for the feds, informants, confidential witnesses that say, hey, Fats, I got a bird for you. You interested in the bird? And all he has to do is say, yes, I'm interested. That's the conspiracy, right?
No doubt. That's a conspiracy, but at the same time, I'm going to tell you what took these guys down, it wasn't the cocaine. That's what the whole thing about it is, because they doing this shit across America with powder and ain't nobody's going to jail. You never hear, unless it's a, 20, 30, 50 kilo bus, you don't hear nobody getting arrested or busted for, selling powder cocaine in their projects. You know what I mean? It's the crack is what's bringing the, because the crack laws can trigger, the laws. And see, now let me just give the listeners a quick update. Back when I was selling drugs, it took 50 grams of crack cocaine to trigger a 10-year mandatory minimum. It took 5,000 grams of powder cocaine to trigger the same amount of time. So the disparity was so different, bro. They took down a generation of drug dealers. Now I got to say that we took down a generation of people that were using crack cocaine. I got to take responsibility for that part as well. But they took down a generation of black people for the disparity between crack and powder was like way significant. Black people were more prone to sell crack cocaine. But let me tell you this, in 1986, Joe Biden and them said, man, we're going to make these stiff drug penalty laws. And what happened was they convinced Congress that you had to use some wild chemicals to make this crack cocaine. That's why people are going crazy over it. Alex, you're talking to a ex-chemist. You know what I mean? You're talking to somebody who cooked, a lot of kilos of cocaine. All you need is baking soda. So if baking soda is if baking soda is some hell of a chemical, it shouldn't be in everybody's refrigerator. It shouldn't be sold in every supermarket in town. So they knew what they were doing. They came back while I was in federal prison and said, you know what, we were wrong. This targeted black people, we're going to change the laws and we're going to make these sentences much closer. Now it takes like, I believe it's 9 ounces, probably like 250 grams, which is 9 ounces roughly, of crack cocaine to trigger a 10-year sentence. It used to be 50. Now it's 250 grams of crack cocaine, but you still it's still to trigger a 10-year minimum with powder. You only need 4 kilos, which is 4,000 grams. So it's still a disparity, and so then they started giving people time reductions that was in jail for crack cocaine. I was convicted on 98.8 grams of cocaine. If somebody get convicted with that now, they would never go to the feds. They probably wouldn't even go to the state. They probably would get probation. So what they did was they started letting people out, reducing people's sentences. But I couldn't get out of jail and I couldn't get no time off because of the mandatory what is it? The mandatory minimum. Congress could only change the mandatory minimum. Congress refused to do that. So y'all wasn't sincere about helping people with this law, because I mean, I can go on and on about this shit, but they foul, they wrong, they targeting motherfuckers still, you know, for this crack cocaine, you know, because it carries a harsher penalty, you know, and so many times I try to tell the youngsters they not gonna stop, and you know they'll listen, but they not gonna stop getting their money. But sometimes you got to change the game up, know the laws you're working with in this day and era. Crack cocaine is not the drug to sell because they punishing you with it.
Yeah, man. The actual next sentence in the indictment after Fats arranged to obtain the powder cocaine, he then arranged to have the co-conspirators cook the cocaine into crack. So that's what you're talking about.
That's what got him the time. Yeah,
that's what got him the time. Once he I guess he could have just had a discussion, just like in your case. All you said was have such and such rock it up from the hood, right? Have such and such rock it up, and that was your conspiracy.
That was it. That's all. You know, once I said those words, that let them know that I knew that what they were trying to do. You know, I co-conspired on a conversation. I delivered powder cocaine, but since we had a talk about crack cocaine, and I still left the powder, you know, I was indicted on that conspiracy, man. And this is how they doing in the black communities. They're not doing this shit everywhere with other drugs. You know, right now you have a fentanyl epidemic. You had an oxy, you know, epidemic, you know what I mean? And they didn't go take them drugs. What they said was, oh, we learned from crack, so we not gonna put them stiff penalties on those other drugs. No, y'all don't put them stiff penalties on them other drugs, because them y'all Congress kids and, you know, white kids and shit like that was involved in that drug. So they didn't want to put the penalties on it like that. So man, they know what the hell they doing, man.
Yeah, man, that's interesting that once you go from the powder to the crack, it just changes your whole sentencing guidelines, even though it is the exact same drug, right? It's the exact
same drug with baking soda, you know, yeah. and we all know we done took baking soda to brush our teeth. We done took baking soda to do all kind of stuff. It's not a chemical. It's not nothing that, you know, and that's all you mix powder with to make crack, and they punishing people like 90 going north with it, man. And that just ain't fair. That shit need to get straightened out all the way. It should be 1 for 1 across the board.
I actually knew someone that not only put the bacon, was it baking soda or baking powder?
Baking soda, yeah, baking soda.
I knew someone that put the baking soda, but in addition to the baking soda, added 7-Up, the soda drink. Have you ever heard of that mixture? Adding 7-Up, some of the baking soda, and the cocaine to make the crack.
And well, you know, back in the it came out
with it smelled like 7-Up sometimes.
Wow, that's soda. Crazy. Yeah.
I don't know what the reason was though. You know,
I mean, you know what? Back in the day, they was trying to make, you know, they put procaine in it to stretch it out. They tried to make it with everything. You know, these hood chemists, man, they was trying to put everything in it to stretch $1 and do all kind of shit with it. So I've heard people do all kind of crazy stuff, you know, but to be honest with you, it wasn't no hell of a chemical that made people act or react crazy. You know, when they did cook it, it basically was. You know, what happens is, for people who says bullshit, FG, you know, crack made people act way different than powder. You're absolutely right, because crack got to the bloodstream faster than powder do. And that's what was the situation. If you took powder or you took another form of cocaine and you injected it intravenously, it would give you the same effect as crack cocaine. So that was what the difference was. It got to the bloodstream a lot faster, and it made people more strung out, you know. So, but the process was nonetheless nothing extra to warrant no extra time, man.
Well, even the laws did change to the degree to where, for example, Carr, who just pled guilty in this case, who is T-Bone, back in, let's say, 20 years ago, he would have been looking at 30-something years in prison, right?
Well, that's what I say, depending on his record. A lot of homies was getting ramped up, because what they were doing, Alex, is when you have a prior, you know, in the feds, what they do is they'll give you an 850. If they want you bad enough, they'll give you an 851 enhancement. And what an 851 enhancement does is it tells the judge that you got a prior. So what they want to do is double up the time based on that prior. You know, so a lot of homies came with 10 years, got the 851 enhancement, and they walked away with 20. So they didn't do no different crime than I did. It's just that they had a prior. I've never had a prior drug conviction ever in my life. You know, my first drug case ever, I got 10 years for. Had I had a prior, they would have gave me 20. I mean, they would have loved to. And they didn't have that opportunity. But had I had a old got caught with some a 20 rock back in the day when I was on some small time shit, they would have used that as a prior, bro, and gave me a dub easy.
Damn.
And that's the foul shit they doing, because a dude that get caught with, oh, come on, man, you get caught with an ounce or two. That you go to rehab, man. Go to, you know what I mean? Get probate, you know. So that crack, man, they know what they were doing. It was, and the thing about it, Joe Biden and them, who is y'all president right now, who y'all still vote this dude in, you know, he was the initiator, one of the initiators of the crack cocaine law. Blacks don't pay attention to that. You know, all they do, they want they Section 8, they want their food stamps, you know what I mean? And they forget about the shit that these dudes did back to us in the day. But that's another story. But you know, I can get deep on that shit when it comes to that work, man. But I hope Fats get action, you know, on this case, you know what I mean, as far as, you know, maybe 5 for the work, 5 for the gun, go walk that 10 off. You know, he still got some time. Fats was younger, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was 45. I guess I'm not sure if he was 45 when he got indicted or if he's 45 now. Sometimes they be messing up their ages, but he's definitely in his mid to late 40s. And
I mean, that's still late in the game, though. You know what I mean? To get a 10
Yeah.
piece, you know. So, but I wish him the best, bro. And I hope T-Bone can go back on some kind of appeal, get some time knocked off, man. Because that's just some bullshit. What they ramping these charges up. You know, that's some bullshit.
Hey, I used to think that looking at federal sentences, like when I'm actually reading it, it looked like you're doing less time than looking at years. But I'm looking at this 188 months. It sounds like a little bit of time, but you know, that 188 months, that's no joke.
Hell no, it ain't no joke. You know, and the thing about it is, you know, this the problem I have with it as well. You know, you got a dude in the project selling some drugs to people who willingly coming to buy them. You know, and then you got Guy Redford who stormed the motherfucking whole United States Capitol, man, and person ended up dying. I ain't saying he killed somebody, but person died in the process. You know, you guys stormed the fucking United States Capitol and you get 7 years. You know what I mean? So somewhere up in here, this shit ain't really right. You know, just let you know that, you know, some of these laws, man, is bias.
Yeah, when you look at this indictment, there's really no violence, there's no shootings, there's no killings. It's just drugs for the most part. Maybe a couple of gun possessions, but I really don't think a brother should be going to prison for what's 188 months, 16 years,
15 years, 8 months. Yeah.
Definitely they over sentenced T-Bone, but of course, like you said, they have their guidelines, right? So they look to their chart, they look at their guidelines, they look at your previous convictions,
no doubt,
and you get whatever that comes out to. But man, that's unfortunate. But I wanted to tap in with a couple more things before we leave here. I want to know. I wanted to talk about Big Tupp and that song "Won't Stop Being the Blood." But I also wanted to get your take on this whole these 4 people that went down to Mexico, claiming to, I guess the female claiming to wanting to get some sort of cosmetic surgery, and they get shot up once they cross the Texas border into the town of Matamoros.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna play a quick video on that, and then maybe we'll tap in with Tupp in a few minutes as well to talk about that song "Won't Stop Being the Blood" that you were in actually while you was doing your time. They showed a picture of you in that video. But I want to tap in first with let's see, this whole drug cartel thing down in Mexico real quick. Let me play a quick clip, and then we'll get your whole insight on that, because I know you think that there's some kind of shenanigans going on here.
No doubt.
And I'm not really sure. I try to give the benefit of the doubt to the folks. Let me see here. Let me play this clip. Here we go. Let's see here. Bear with me, folks. This is my first time. This is our first Streets and Scholars episode where we're doing this remotely. And I am trying to find the video here on my desktop. Okay, I know what the problem is. I didn't open it up. Here we go. There it is. And let me now pull that in. And here's a story from the national ABC News. And here
Mexico
it is.
tonight, where Mexican prosecutors have now filed charges tonight in the kidnapping of those 4 Americans, 2 of them killed. And today, the striking image, they lined up the suspects. Matt Rivers in Mexico City again tonight.
Tonight, for the first time, a look at 5 of the men authorities say kidnapped 4 Americans in northern Mexico, killing 2 of them. Each allegedly members of the Gulf Cartel. They were captured not by authorities, but apparently by the cartel itself. Thursday morning, next to this pickup truck, on the windshield, a note purportedly from cartel leadership. We have decided to deliver those involved and directly responsible, it reads, referring to the kidnapping. Shortly after the 4 Americans crossed into Mexico last Friday, they were attacked. The FBI investigating this video reportedly showing their abduction as it happened. Driven around for days, they ended up here. ABC News obtaining this video of the crime scene where the Americans were eventually found. Bloodstains still on the floor. 2 victims, Latavia McGee and Eric Williams, found alive. 2 more, Shaid Woodard and Zindell Brown, dead. Their bodies now back in the U.S. for burial.
And David, all 5 of those suspects now officially charged with aggravated kidnapping and homicide. David.
All right, Matt Rivers in Mexico City. Matt, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos.
Okay, that is the update on that whole drug cartel story where four folks from South Carolina actually drove across the border in Texas, went into the town of Matamoros, which is controlled by the Gulf Cartel, which is one of the oldest cartels in all of Mexico. They started in the 1930s, bringing alcohol into the United States during the Prohibition period. But somehow members of that cartel started shooting up their car. They were in a white minivan, and 2 were killed, 2 survived. What's your whole take on that, FG?
Well, I believe, man, that it's to me, it's so I don't have a strong understanding of what they really was over there doing, bro. They say they was going over there for somebody for cosmetic surgery or going to see a doctor per se for whatever reason. You know, you got 4 people, 4 people to go over to Mexico to see a doctor, and that part, was a little strange. I believe the cartel did what the cartel do. Maybe they really did thought they were somebody else. Maybe because they were Americans, or maybe because I don't know. They was in a turf or whatever. They gunned them down, drug them out, took them to somewhere. I don't know if upon their investigation, they said, "Oh shit, these are really just regular citizens." But 2 are already dead. It is real fuzzy to me, the whole get out. Even them turning over 5 of their members, to the law enforcement in Mexico. And looking at these pictures, and the one thing about it, like I say, I hate to be stereotyped as a black man, but looking at these pictures, man, y'all going over to Mexico to do what, and they black, of course, the cartel damn sure don't give a shit about, us, so it's just puzzling, the whole situation. I think more shit gonna come out. I really don't think these dudes that got turned over to the law enforcement gonna fucking do a year. Mexican officials, they do shit different down there, man. So I just don't know. I don't believe none of it, or I don't believe 3/4 of it, to be honest with you, Alex.
Well, they actually did have an appointment with a doctor at 7:30 a.m. on that morning. Latavia had a scheduled appointment with a doctor at 7:30 a.m., but they didn't cross the border until 9:18. So they were late. But according to some reports, Latavia had called the doctor and said, "We're running late, but we're still coming." So they were 2 hours late, and they crossed over from the town of Brownsville, Texas, into Matamoros. And they have their whole all their movements. They have their every street they went down, every turn they made. And there was one point where whoever was driving the minivan actually turned in the opposite direction,
opposite the way of the doctor's office.
Of the doctor's office. I don't know if that means something. I know a lot of people are going to be scratching their head like, where were they going? The doctor's office is that way, but y'all is going this way.
Right.
So I guess you tapped in with that too, huh?
No doubt. That was also suspicious, but the two bodies just got back, I believe, yesterday. The two dead bodies got back to the U.S. soil yesterday, or to the U.S. not embassy, but the leaders or whoever they sent it to. Yes, just yesterday. The other two were shot. They were finally they got to the hospital, made it to the hospital back on U.S. soil. One of them got shot in the leg 3 times. He had to have some hardware like I got in my leg placed. So they know what happened. So you got 2 alive that can talk, so I believe that they're on them just as heavy as what the hell y'all was doing over there, really, and that's the thing about, if they was over there on something suspicious, this is what the technology do today, Alex. It makes it so hard for you to lie like we could do in the 80s, because you didn't have no tracking devices. You didn't have certain shit, So I really want to see what comes out, if anything. When you talk about relations between the U.S. and Mexico and the cartel, I believe you're going to get, you're going to get so many conflicting stories. And even if U.S. authorities do find out the truth, they may never shed light on it, just based on, they know they dealing with Mexico and the cartel. The family of these victims, man, is calling for, outrage. They believe everybody should be arrested who was involved. They expect them to go arrest the whole cartel and shit like that, but that's definitely not going to happen. Fortunately, these people went over there for whatever reason they went over there for. It's almost believed that they made the doctor. I hate to, like I say, but if they were on something else, it was easy to say, call the doctor, set up some kind of appointment. It could have been a tooth appointment. It could have been a dentist appointment. A lot of people go down to Mexico for all sort of things, small things, veneers. It could be small shit. It didn't have to be nothing major, But for them not to go straight to the doctors unless they was lost, but you had GPS that could have took you straight there. There's so many questions, man, and I just really want to know, I just really wonder what was going on, and then for them to, the cartel to just gun them down like that without even questioning them first, that was crazy.
Now, what do you think of the Haitian theory? It is true that there are Haitians that live in this, that moved into this area, Matamoros, Mexico, in the state of Tamaulipas, and it is true that Haitians are in there trying to, get their hustle on and make some money. And maybe they just saw these 4 black folks, 3 black guys and a girl in this minivan, and just assume, there goes those Haitians again. And we sick and tired of seeing these dudes. They're over here in our turf. They're over here in our area, and they're over here trying to, make money in our spaces. Let's just gun them down, because I'm sure they've been having some back and forth with these Haitians for a while, and maybe that's the reason why they just opened fire on this white minivan.
No doubt, but one of the individuals that was arrested, St. Jose Guadalupe, he going by G. A judge ordered him to temporarily be detained for 5 months for the investigation to be carried out. I've never heard of no shit like that. How do you put a number on the time that the investigation is going to be carried out, opposed to, we'll let you out when we finish the investigation? So I'm gonna keep my eyes on this dude being detained for 5 months for the investigation to be carried out. And this is from the Attorney General's office. So I'm trying to see if they're going to hold some of these dudes for 5 months, man, on their investigation, and start letting dudes out when we not talking about this no more. And that's the slick shit I be talking about.
Now you're talking about one of these 5 guys that was taken into custody, right?
Yes. One of them is, like I say, Jose Guadalupe, and he go by G. And I don't know what was it that he was only being detained for 5 months until they finished the investigation, but all that shit sound fishy to me. I don't think none of them will do, like I say, more than a year, off of this, because once people start forgetting what's going on, because so many things are happening around, these dudes are being slid out the back door, and who gonna know the difference? The U.S. not, you see that, like we said, we keep going back to the Shanquilla Robinson, they refuse to prosecute that no matter who's in this on it. Just when it comes to these international situations, specifically with Mexico, because if this was Canada, I'll guarantee you it'd been handled 1,000 times different. So I don't believe Mexico have a grip on their own country. So, this shit gonna go like that.
Yeah, man, there's so much corruption going on in Mexico. I don't know what the solution is down there, because you could pretty much pay off anybody from a judge to a cop. But I do know this, though. I do know that the cartels in Mexico and also the Mexican government, they fear the United States. They fear the military power of the United States. They fear the long arm of the law of the United States. And most of the times they don't want any problems with the United States justice system and the United States military. And maybe because they killed some innocent Americans, the cartel's trying to get in front of it to say, okay, our bad. We made a mistake. Not only did we make a mistake, we're going to turn over 5 of those that were responsible so that could appease the American people and the families of those victims, and kind of keep the law enforcement aspect from the United States out of this. I really do believe that some of these cartels understand, seeing Pablo Escobar, seeing how Pablo Escobar was he was eventually prosecuted and killed by U.S. guns, and then was El Chapo. El Chapo was taken into custody and tried in a court here in the United States. And also Manuel Noriega, who was the president of Panama, was brought to the United States. That was the president that they brought him to the United States and put him in a federal prison, I believe, in Florida. So I think that maybe there is a level of fear that the cartel and the Mexican government have because, the United States can get very thorough when they want to be.
You absolutely got a point there, but I'm gonna point something else out too when you talk about fear. I don't know if they have that much fear because they know they do a lot of backdoor shit in their investigation. Now, let's focus on this picture right here, Alex, that you have posted on the screen right here. Let's take that middle guy, you know what I mean? It looked like he's smiling, telling his boys, man, no worries, man. We be out in 2 months, no worries. You see, he got a smile on his face. For somebody to be arrested for getting handed over for some murders, bro, fuck you smiling at, it look like he cracking jokes and shit. You know what I mean? And look at these dudes though. This is the average looking, Mexican guy in America. These dudes don't look like killers and gangsters. You know what I mean? That don't mean they not, but just look at them though. You know what I mean? They look like just average, Mexicans, in LA, and cold killers though. So that's another point I want to point out. Don't judge a book by its cover either, But like I say, the dude in the middle, man, he looking like, man, I'll be out by Tuesday, man. I ain't worried about this shit. That's just the look that he's, I don't know what the hell he's smiling now, because I know if I get arrested for a murder, ain't gonna be no smiles and shit. That's for sure.
Well, sometimes the cartels, when they have guys within their cartel that do things that may have been a little rogue, may have made a mistake, they usually just kill them. And then give the bodies, then let the bodies pop up.
Then get the bodies over. Then get it. Yeah, you right. But this is the thing about it. Propaganda. They quickly handed over 5 dudes because of that fear you say of the U.S. We have to do something to show that we're trying to make this right. You can't make this right for the families of the people who got killed, bro. You know what I mean? You can't make it right by handing over some dudes that could have and probably didn't even have nothing to do with it. You know what I mean? You never know. The top dude who probably was in there that did it, he probably was valuable. You probably didn't turn him in. You probably, the way they get down over there is, look, bro, you got to go fight that charge. You know what I mean? And one of these dudes probably wasn't even there. You never know. I'm just saying, there's so much I don't believe shit they coming with on this case right here in this situation. I think it's all bullshit. I think it's smoke and mirrors, if you ask me.
It sounds as if you're suggesting that perhaps a couple of the 4 people from South Carolina may have been there to either cop or be involved in a transaction of some sort, which was what a lot of people on social media are saying.
I'm not going to place no blame on them. I'm not that type of dude. I'm not just going to say, but I do think they were there for more than something than for her to go to the doctor. I do believe that. That's what I can't say. I don't think it was strictly just to go see a doctor. I think there was other plans involved that's not being mentioned, good or bad. You know what I mean? But I think it was some other plans involved.
Well, I'm curious of the criminal backgrounds of the 4. Do they have any rap sheets? Do they have any records? Did anything, do they have any drug charges from the past? I think that would raise some eyebrows if they were involved in something.
According to Mexican authorities, a couple of them had criminal backgrounds. That is stated in this report that we had on the screen earlier. They said a couple of them had criminal backgrounds. They didn't say what the charges was. They just said that the Mexican authorities did obtain a record that 2 of them had criminal backgrounds.
Now, how would Mexico have that information? That should be coming from the United States side. That should be coming from South Carolina. If they've been to state prison in South Carolina where they're originally from. That's what I want to hear. I want to see their arrest records.
I mean, but it's nothing for a Mexican official to have ties with a fucking DA or police officer or somebody in the U.S. That's easy for a Mexican official to have. One of his cousins could be a sheriff over here or a politician over here, and that information is not hard to get, to be honest with you. Why did they put that into this report? Why did they even state that though? What the hell does that got to do with it? This ain't Canada. Mexico let felons over there all the time. So this definitely wasn't is no excuse to kill them just because they had a criminal record, even if they did, you know what I mean? So, but they did state that.
No, but if they were down there involved in some sort of drug transaction, then I think there would be less sympathy. There'll be less sympathy for them for whatever they were involved in, because you were going down there for nefarious purposes. But if they were really just down there as tourists going to see a doctor, then they would be considered innocent bystanders of what these guys from the cartel did.
No doubt. I definitely agree with you. The dude, like right here, I don't know if it's the president of Mexico. He told reporter Mexican officials learned Americans had a criminal background in the United States, but he did not elaborate on how that might relate to the kidnapping. So they threw that out there, whether it's true or not. They threw that out there, and that's pretty much towards the bottom of this report. But we're going to see, because like you said, they had drug charges, man, and things of that nature that really can get shit swept up under the rug. That really could, make U.S. officials less likely to put they all into it, unfortunately.
Yeah, but if they were down there involved in drug trafficking, these four black folks from South Carolina, I think that I think they would state that to say, look, they went down there and created a problem that caused them to get kidnapped and shot, which is a whole different story from they went down there as tourists to get cosmetic surgery, and the 3 were there just with the female as a friend. That's like 2 different narratives. One evokes a lot of sympathy for them, and the other one is like, oh, they went down there and created their own problem. So the question is, which is the true narrative?
Well, how many times we done seen a narrative where they told us one story and then something else is to be found out. I'm looking at these 3 dudes, and I'm just wondering, you know what I mean? Was this their cousin? Was one of them fucking her? Because I don't got a friend in America, that a female friend in America that can convince me to go to Mexico with her to a doctor. You know what I mean? You can't get me to do it, Alex. You know what I mean? So what about that part? You know what I mean? My cousins can't. I'm gonna tell the man, girl, you better go to Kaiser. You know what I mean? And you can't convince me to go to Mexico. Not that part of Mexico anyway. If you're talking about Tijuana, which I've never been in my life, that's one thing. That's just crossing over right there and walking back. But these dudes, they down there where the cartel is fully functioning. You know what I mean? That's like, or if I was in El Paso and they said, let's cross over here to Santa Lu, man, I'm not going over there. So there's so many questions.
Tijuana got a pretty cold cartel too. It used to be called the Arellano Felix cartel, and now I think it's just the Tijuana cartel, and they used to be the most active at one point. So there's cartels all across the Mexican border, from California to Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, where this one happened at. So
well, I ran into them myself personally. We was in Cabo San Lucas, I believe we were at. So they always tell you don't leave the resort or do this, only go specific places. Man, we left the resort, man. We went to a nightclub that the whole town said the nightclub was owned by the cartel. So, but the nightclub was cracking. We probably about 2 vans deep, So when we get down there, man, we see that the military was just riding around, like standing on the back of vans and Jeeps with guns, just patrolling the area. But they said this club was owned by the cartel. So while we were in the club and shit, we popping bottles, doing our shit, you know what I mean? And One of the females that was with her son was there, and he got into a lightweight argument with the with a Mexican cat, you know. So the scrap took off, and when it took off, he's standing right next to me. We on the dance floor. The rest of our party is like over there in the little VIP section and doing that. I just happened to be standing next to this dude. Didn't know him from a breath of fresh air, but we all came together. You know what I mean? So we get to squabbling in the club, you know, and man, my wife was livid, bro. You know, she was livid. You know what I mean? Like, you helping this dude, you don't know this dude. You know what I mean? The cartel own this motherfucker. You know what I mean? And so we exited the club, man. Got our van, trying to get our people to get up out of there. And one of the homies was still stuck up in there. Or one of the dudes that came with us that I didn't know him either was still up in there. Shit, we went back up in there, man. Soon as we leave, we see the dudes with the guns hitting the corner, you know, to see what's cracking. We in Mexico, bro, man. My wife was so motherfucking mad at me, man. She didn't talk to me for a couple of days. She like, man, they could have blew your motherfucking head off. But like I told her, dude came with us, you know, this is what it is. You know, what the fuck you want from me? You know, and she was right. But at the same time, man, we all came together on 2 vans, you know, but we could have all got laid out as soon as we jumped in them vans, bro, and got on hitting some of them back streets around there instead of staying our ass at the resort. You know what I mean?
Were you right here in this part of Mexico when you came down? Do you remember what part that was?
Where in Cabo?
Where's Cabo at over here on this map?
I don't see it on this map. Let's see. Yeah, I don't see it on that map. You might have to grab another map to see what Cabo San Lucas is.
But you see this area right here in green that I'm pointing at with the cursor? Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, I see it, but I was thinking Cabo might be down somewhere towards the brown part, but I'm not like I said, I'm not sure. You would have to pull it up on a map. Because we flew into Cabo.
Well, this green area right here is the Gulf Cartel, and you see how close it is to Texas. Texas is right there. This white line is the border with Texas. So it's just one street. You just drive down and boom, you're in Matamoros, and now you're in the Gulf Cartel turf. And just like if you're on the west side of Mexico, right here where Tijuana's at, you know, you just cross over and you're in the Arellano Felix cartel area. So all of these areas are risky to go to.
No doubt, you know what I mean. But to be at a cartel owned establishment, you know, well, my whole thing was, you know, the cartel own these clubs to make money. They make money with tourists. You know, my ideology was, you know, killing a motherfucker at their establishment over a punk ass fight. To me was I didn't think they would do no shit like that to jeopardize their business. You know what I mean? You know, and but like you say, you never know. You never know who was somebody's nephew or who was somebody's little brother, or, you know, you just never know, you know. But at the moment, you know, a motherfucker acted in the context of how he acts, you know what I mean? If you came with us, bro, you know, I'm not finna stand next to you and watch 3 motherfuckers rush you. You know what I mean? That's just how we was raised, Alex, you know, but luckily, like I say, we got out of there. You know, that's a couple people mad, but a couple people, like, you know, the dude who moms that I did that was like, shit, man, you know, she put it on the line, but, you know, I'm glad we made it up out that situation, you know.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I guess we'll have to wait for more time to pass to find out what role these 4 people from South Carolina played, if they were responsible in any way of what happened to them getting shot up, or if the theory of the Haitian theory might be true. You know, I'm gonna give them the benefit of the doubt. But the 4 victims, let me just give their names real quick. Latavia Tay McGee, that's the female. Eric James Williams, Shaheed Woodard, and Zindell Brown. I believe it was Shaheed and Zindell that let's see, the 2 that were killed.
Yeah, which 2 was killed?
Okay, McGee and Williams were rescued. So McGee is Latavia McGee, Eric Williams are the ones that were able to come back. So Shaheed Woodard and Zindell Brown were the ones that were found dead. Woodard and Brown.
So the female made it back?
The female made it back along with one of the males. That would be Eric Williams. So we'll find out on that real quick. And before we wrap up here, I wanted to just talk about that song. I don't know if we're gonna get Big Tupp to tap in, but at least I'm gonna play this part. And let me see. We're gonna go to the end of the song real quick. We're gonna go to his part. And a lot of people just didn't know. They just didn't know that you was actually in that song. But here we go. Let me play this real quick, and then we could talk about it. This is Mitchy Slick. Won't Stop Being the Blood. We talked about this a couple episodes ago. I'm gonna play the last part with Big Tupp.
All I'ma have to get stoned down because I won't stop being a blood. And it ain't no turning back for me. My family is the hood. All I got is cap, homie. My little brother lost his life for cherry nights. And my uncle on trial right now, he fighting life. My big brother gone to the fans for making bread. They ain't catch you with nothing, just what another nigga said. So fuck your gang injunctions and your opinions on me banging like I flame for nothing, please.
Okay, there we go. That was his part. You actually texted me, FG, about when you I think you text me when you were trying to text him, but that's the part of Big Tupp's part where he talked about FG. That and if you notice, there was a picture of FG right there in the video, y'all. That let me cue that part up and put that on the screen. Let me see here.
Yeah, no, that was a hell of a song, man. You know, you got to think about it, man. You know, when it was talking about, you know, it's at the height of, you know, functioning motherfucker gang members, you know what I mean? I was in federal prison at the time, you know, functioning active gang member. Even looking at the video that you just showed, man, I seen a few loved ones that lost their life while I was gone, man. Some young homies, man, that, you know, was dear to me, you know what I mean? And you know, when they made this song, man, you know, they made it wholeheartedly. You know, I know a lot of people out there and our listeners, you know, are against the gang violence, and I get it, but that's where we come from, and that's what it was. And these dudes made this song called "Won't Stop Being the Blood," and they meant that, man. You know, and like I said, I was in federal prison, man. You know, when I found out, you know, that I, you know, was spoke on in the song, man. You know, I get it at the time, you know, that I that's how I displayed it, you know, coming up, man. That, you know, that this P thing was for life, you know, and so that was a hit record for Mitchy Slick and them back then, man, you know. And I was at Victorville Yard, you know, back then. And if you look at the pose, you look at the murder ones I got on my face, you know what I mean? I mean, that's how look like I'm the biggest dude in the world, you know, but that's how I carried it, you know, when, you know, people talking that shit about he was putting it on extra. No, I carried it like that, you know what I mean? And you know, and that's what it was. But like I say, man, I appreciate the Big Tupp for throwing me in there. I'm seeing if he can tap into give us some insight on that song, man, you know, because I still don't know what year that was. I still don't know, you know, what inspired the song, you know, who initially, you know, shit, man, let's write this music, you know, but it definitely was a hood staple, you know, especially coming from out of Dago, you know what I mean? It was well received, actually, you know, in the gang community.
Now that picture right there, that was taken in the feds, and you sent that picture, I guess, out to your family, to the homies, right?
Yeah, I sent it to Tupp out there, man, and you know, like I said, you know, the homie showed me love. Tupp, Donnie Rule, you know, I had so many people that was sending me pictures and so many, you know, letters, you know what I mean? And it made me, you know, Mozzie kind of summed it up for me, you know what I mean? And he said, you know, they sent me to the feds. It was only right, but I got a kite from every nigga that was posed to right. You know what I mean? And the homies tapped in with me, man, and kept me well informed. It just, at that time, we couldn't see the video, you know, we couldn't hear the music, you know, at that time. So it was people coming in like, man, the homie put you in the song. The homie put you in the song. And I was like, man, that's what's up. But I felt the title at that time for me to be in that song was appropriate, you know.
What's the this background here? Was that the place where you guys all take pictures in the feds? What is up with what's that painting on the wall?
Well, see, that was one thing about when I talk about the politicking of a new prison. You know, everybody hate to go to a new prison because when you get there, you don't got shit. You know what I mean? The commissary list got 10 items on it opposed to 200 at other facilities. This painting right here was something that, you know, we talked to the staff about. Hey, man, you know, you think y'all could let one of the inmates paint something on the wall so when we take a picture, it just don't look like a wall, you know what I mean? And it was just small shit like that, you know, and you know, they gave the homie them some paint and they went in there and painted that shit, and it just became a spot that we took pictures of, amongst a whole bunch of other places, you know what I mean? But that was definitely one of them, the little picture spot,
Okay. Well, I guess we're gonna have to tap in with Big Tupp another time. I guess we sent him the link, but I guess he's tied up at the moment, which is cool. We'll
he
get
said
him.
he was on his way, but I don't know what that mean, if he was trying to link in or click in, you know what I mean? But yeah, man, that was a hit record that them dudes came out with down there, opposed to so many other songs, and the people that's not familiar with Big Tuck, I mean, he got songs with Sugar Booger, he got songs with Big Y, he got songs with, so many artists, and when it came to that thing, actually, when I came home, Tupp was the face of Cross Atlantic. When you Google Cross Atlantic Paru, everything Tupp came up, videos, rap songs in the hood, writing on the wall, you know what I mean? So Tupp represented the hood, to the fullest, until, like I say, I came home, tried to talk some sense into him. Hey, homie, we doing something different now. Let's get our lives together and shit of that nature. You know what I mean? But at the same time, man, I love this music and still do. And but he got some heaters out there. I still listen to gangster rap. I still, even though I do what I do, I still love gangbang music. I still, and I'm at the gym, and it's hard to lift these weights without no motherfucking with listening to some country or some soft rock or something. So I still like listening to my gangster rap, man. I mean, it's art to me, no doubt.
Yeah, for sure. All right, man. So tell all the people where they could tap in with you, where they can find you, where they could connect with FG.
Look, man, I'm over there at FG Unleashed, man. I got a new setup over here, man. Me and Alex, and so I'm finna definitely start going live and putting some shit out there. Hit me up on Instagram, though. Come follow me over there, and let's get this thing going, man.
All right, and I want everybody to tap in with me at Alex Alonso 101, Twitter and Instagram, and also the Street TV platform on YouTube. And I guess on that note, I want to thank everybody for listening to us. Make sure you're following us on all the podcast platforms, Google, Spotify, iHeart. And if you're listening to us on Apple, oh man, I had some comments and questions that we'll have to do next week that people left on the Apple rating and review. But if you're listening to us on Apple, leave us a rating and review. And next week, for sure, if I don't forget, we're going to go through some of the questions and comments that you guys left on the Apple podcast platform. And thanks for listening to another fire episode of Streets and Scholars.